Hope I don't have to change anything on here. Like, I'm on audio, I'm on video, right? I'm not going to have to change anything, I hope, right?
No.
Because my partner left the house. It's like...
You're all good. Okay, I think we're ready to begin. Here we go. So hello, everyone. My name is Paulo Casperdet with the City of West Hollywood, and welcome to the West Hollywood COVID-19 webinar series. Today's topic is combating loneliness, isolation, depression, and anxieties during COVID-19. May is Mental Health Month, and now more than ever, it is critical to access mental health information, resources, and services. The City of West Hollywood continues to provide social services and is connecting community members to information and resources during the COVID-19 outbreak. Please call 323-848-6510 for more information, or visit our website at www.weho.org/coronavirus for additional resources on mental health. If you feel lonely or scared, remember at the moment, might be distance, but we're not disconnected. You're not alone. The West Hollywood community is here for you all. Alrighty, so in today's webinar, I'll went over some welcome and introductions. And then we'll have Lydia, who is the Internship Coordinator, Behavioral Health Department with APLA Health, to go over resilience and coping skills in a time of crisis. Then Lika, the Clinical Supervisor of the West Hollywood Comp Services Center from Jewish Family Services of Los Angeles, will go over coping and stress and anxieties. Then Mandy, the Director of Arts, Wellness, and Engagement Programs from Jewish Family Services of Los Angeles, will go over accessing programming and workshops. And then finally, we'll go over some questions. Before we begin today's webinar, though, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed to all those who have registered. Additionally, the recording will be available at the city's website and the city social media outlets, as well as WehoTV. Please use the questions tab that is located on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions. Polls will also appear on the right-hand side next to the questions tab. And without that, we'll turn it over to Lydia with APLA Health.
Hello, everyone. Glad to see you. Could make it today. I'm going to be talking about the overall picture for a little bit, just to kind of set the stage of, why are we all talking about coping and having and being resilient. And I'm setting this within a wider context of trauma, grief, and loss. The global pandemic has created a new reality marked by grief and loss. So many future plans, concerts, meetings, travel plans, schools have been canceled in the wake of the virus. It's forced us to process both individual and collective grief in the face of an uncertain future, and which we often are feeling powerless to control. We're all dealing with a collective loss of the world we knew. Grief is typically associated with death, but it can follow any type of loss. For example, people often experience grief after a divorce or a job loss. Some of the things we're grieving as a result of this pandemic include job loss, financial anxiety, loss of a sense of safety, loss of a sense of trust, worry about loved ones, social distancing with the lockdown, feelings of isolation, change in daily habits and routines, so there's the loss there, special plans and events being canceled, clashes with family and friends during a time of stress, worry about how to pay the rent, utilities, and other bills, fear and anxiety over how the pandemic will affect the world, and fears for the future. We can also feel anticipatory grief, which is a sense of like there might be further loss to come. I think a lot of people have felt that about financial stability and the economy, etc. So, of course, there's going to be heightened emotions. And in normal circumstances, we could turn readily, easily to others for support. We might gather together with friends and family and share memories, and cry, and provide general support for one another. And this is often not accessible to us in person during this time. So, one of the most important things to remember in times of grief and loss is to remember what helped you cope with loss and adversity, with hard times in the past. This is often a key and a signal as to what to call upon in this current crisis. So, not forgetting to call upon your strengths, remembering your strengths is like really critical. I'm going to talk briefly about just losing people to COVID. I know some of you have experienced that. There have been losses in West Hollywood of people that we all know and love. Sometimes there's shock and disbelief, anger, regret, sadness. It's important to know that grief is kind of personal as far as how we handle it, and to reach out to our family and friends. The COVID-19 pandemic has upended many aspects of the normal grieving process, even if you're not experiencing a direct loss. Don't assume that what you're feeling isn't grief. You might be coping with job loss, instability, loneliness, and all of this emotional upheaval may trigger feelings of grief and loss. Give yourself permission to mourn and treat yourself and others with kindness during this difficult time. I'm not going to go into very much financial anxiety, but just touch on it very briefly. I think there are sort of different programs rolling out. Find out what you're eligible for. Look at maybe prioritizing your payments. Look at forbearance possibilities. There might be alternative income during this gig economy. And first and foremost, manage your mental health. Some things to common signs of distress, maybe depression, which can be marked by numbness, frequent crying, changes in appetite, trouble focusing, trouble sleeping, might be upsetting dreams, more body aches and pains, can be worsening of health problems, irritability, increased use of alcohol and tobacco and other substances, overeating. Anxiety, I think you probably familiar with that looks like. Our adrenal system is in overdrive. We're hyper vigilant. We're looking out for danger, for threats. Our nervous system is very wired. We might have difficulty sleeping, difficulty concentrating. We'll talk a little bit more about anxiety when we talk about PTSD. Wanted to talk a little bit about, these are some beautiful, this was comes from Paul Gilbert, who wrote a really definitive book on depression called Depression, the Evolution of Powerlessness. He talks about these different emotional regulation systems. And first one he has listed here is incentive and resource seeking. That means we're driven, we're motivated towards incentive, towards rewards and resources to survive. That acts on our dopamine system. The feelings that come up from that are wanting, pursuing, achieving, and consuming. What's happening to that part of our system? Pretty much it's kind of being shut down, right? Our striving for the future, the plans we had, our career goals, a lot of them are kind of put on hold. And then we'll go down here to the threat and self-protection system. Most of us in a time of crisis like this, because it's a life-threatening crisis, right? It activates our threat system. And so it's there to kind of pick up on threats easily and to self-protect. And that triggers release and rush of adrenaline and cortisol. Some of the feelings can be a lot of fear, anxiety, anger, outrage, disgust, sort of thing. With the threat system being overactivated, the reward system kind of being put on hold, put on pause, uncertain and secure. The most important thing to do in this time is to cultivate the soothing, caring, and contentment system. And the function of this system is to feel safe and content with the way things are. Wow. That doesn't mean we're going to love this. It's more about acceptance, being in the present, not letting our minds run too far ahead. And this hormone in this system that's stimulated is oxytocin. And the feelings we get within this system are contented, safe, connected, cared for, and trusted. So it's really time to cultivate care for ourselves, trust in ourselves, trust in the people that are close to us, to maintain those contacts, to nurture those contacts, and really work on ourselves. So reaching out for support is really important. There's also a thing in mental health that we call emotional self-support. That means we're able to turn to ourselves for care, compassion, support, for knowing what's good for us, for nurturing those activities that are healthy and caring and compassionate for ourselves. So that's kind of the challenge that we're faced with in dealing with this crisis, is that often we're really spending a lot more time alone. And it sort of necessitates that the better relationship we have with ourselves, the better we're going to get through this. If let's say we have a long-standing history of depression, well, depression is kind of characterized by self-attack, self-loathing, undermining of the self. We really probably behooves us to get some extra help during this time, because the self-care system is really underdeveloped, and we may need some bolstering with that and some extra support. The same thing with anxiety. So with all these losses and the anticipation of losses, our drive system is thwarted. The drive to push forward, to achieve, to consume, our future-oriented self is frustrated. It's hard to plan ahead, right? And with our threat system higher than normal, our sense of safety is even compromised, right? So it's really, really critical to develop the soothing, caring, and contentment system with ourselves and others. And that pretty much, with not having to worry too much about the future because it's uncertain and it's not helpful, and not driving and striving too far ahead, that kind of leaves us in the present. and working with acceptance of what is, acceptance of uncertainty, working with the here and now in the present. And this calls for expansion of what we call, the next slide is window of tolerance. Oh, that's just a recap. Yeah, it had a little different wording. So the next slide, Paula, is window of tolerance. Okay. Yeah, so this is a little bit about our nervous system. When we're in anxiety, the sympathetic branch, it's like an accelerator. It's like the gas is on. We're pushing the gas pedal. Everything goes up in anxiety. You know, things are kind of racing. Our metabolism's racing. Our breath, our blood pressure, stress hormones. Usually, our digestion and saliva and our sleep cycle suffers from this when we're overactivated with anxiety. And that means typically that we're mobilized for danger. It's there for a reason. And part of it is to kind of get ourselves through crisis. However, it's often overactivated and it's not really helpful. The parasympathetic branch involves our breathing, heart rate, blood pressure. Everything is about relaxation in the parasympathetic nervous system. So basically, we are accessing what we call the relaxation response, which is really, really important. So Lika and I are going to be talking about just activities that help us get into the relaxation response, right? Really, really important in a time like this. Next slide, I think. Okay, so if we look at the traumatic event, the response to trauma can take us outside the normal range where we normally function. And it can lead us to become kind of stuck on the high end of activation in hypervigilance. Could be elation or mania, anxiety, panic, rage. These are all symptoms of anxiety. So that means that part of us is, that's worrying and racing ahead is overactivated. And of course, that's going to typically drain us and cause a lot of other problems. Sometimes people swing back and forth between these two. The stuck on low, where we are often dealing with depression, disconnection, feeling of being shut down, kind of exhausted, numbness. Those are all symptoms of depression. We're kind of checking out from engaging in life. And really, depression in itself involves a kind of self-abandonment and self-attack. There's an attack on the self with depression. We kind of give up on ourselves. And so we're not engaged so much. So some of the clients I've worked with have been coming out of the depression. So they've been working hard and they want to reconnect with people. And then this happens, right? That's really, really tough. So it's finding a way to do the online check-ins, a limited amount of contact with people you know and trust, nurturing those things and nurturing the good things that make us feel better. Next, we want to go to the window of tolerance. So what is there besides these two extremes of being worried or shut down? And some people just go back and forth between the two. Anxiety and depression actually coexist for quite a few people. That's kind of hard because a part of you is like, you're, kind of stuck, your foot on the accelerator with the anxiety and then the foot on the brakes with the depression. it's pretty hard to get anywhere when you have both really going intensely. In the middle zone, this is a part of us that we can develop and cultivate. And this is called the window of tolerance. It was coined by Dan Siegel, one of the fathers of mindfulness. He works at UCLA, a wonderful guy. And this is where we can feel a sense of calm. We're able to move through our life. We're able to feel calm, cool, collected, connected. This is where we can emotionally regulate. And our best work and our best times in life really involve being in touch with this part of ourselves. The window of tolerance, it's kind of an interesting word, tolerance, because it really is, can be quite a really lovely place to be. And it's a great place to spend most of our time. Now, of course, we all get activated, with anxiety or want to shut down. But if we practice enough of these activities that help us expand this window and widen this window, we will be able to return to that window with much more ease. So what are some of the things that cause us to go outside the window? Certainly trauma and crisis like this, it can trigger that. So fear that we have, like unconscious thoughts and bodily feelings, stuff we're not that aware of, is trying to be in control maybe all the time, feeling like we don't matter, a sense of abandonment, rejection, can lead us to kind of then absent ourselves from regulating our own life. So trauma-related core beliefs can be triggered, beliefs about ourselves. So let's say, for instance, we know that a lot of people with depression and anxiety feel feelings of unworthiness, right? So there might be something that happens in the environment, but they will interpret that. I shouldn't say they, because I've struggled with depression in my life too. So I know when I was in that place, I interpreted things that people said or did as like rejection of me or dissing me or, kind of throwing me away. So there's an overinterpretation of a sort of a threat. And so these can be like kind of core beliefs of like, oh, I'm not worthy, or that sort of thing. And then we get a lot of confirmation of that in our lives, right? So if that's happening for us, it might really be exacerbated by this current situation, of course, because things narrow. Our lives are more limited. Our sense of, expansion and connection are more limited. So some of the things that we can do to practice and expand the window of tolerance and then learn to stay in it more are mindfulness and meditation, like being in the present, in the here and now. I'll be sharing with you that I have a mindfulness cognitive behavioral therapy group, 8 week sessions with Dr. Matthew Silverstein coming up this month. And he's teaching a lot of mindfulness skills, and they're just really wonderful for learning how to regulate, relax, get out of these states that are unhelpful to us. So things like grounding exercises, which kind of take you to the present. A good therapist will help you with this. Techniques for self-soothing, emotional regulation, deep, slow breathing. When we're anxious, what happens to our breath? we start to hyperventilate. We're not relaxed. We're not breathing calmly and fully, which really relaxes our nervous system. So, there are a lot of things that can help us expand this window. So trauma in itself, and this is a traumatic time, can create that hyperarousal, the anxiety, the out of control, the overwhelm. Your body wants to fight or run away. These reactions can just kind of take over. And hypoarousal is the where we can get zoned out, spaced out, numb, kind of shutting down. We might want to sleep all the time, just kind of veg out in front of the TV, have lots of screen time, right? Well, screen time, if it's involving getting together with friends, is important. But if we're just spending a lot of time with that, that's often going to make us more depressed. So in that case, we're kind of shutting down. So when you are in the window of tolerance, you feel like you can deal with whatever's happening in your life, even if it's challenging. You might feel stress or pressure, but it bothers you less. And this is definitely the place to be. So paying attention to what stresses you out when stress and trauma shrink your window of tolerance and it throws you off balance. Working with a therapist, practicing meditation, exercise, all those behaviors, these are practices, right? We have to meditate not just once, or go to the gym not just once, right? We have to pick ourselves up and do it on a fairly regular basis to get the benefits. But they're really powerful benefits. So that's part of the goals of like coping, is to learn what we call self-soothing and self-regulating behaviors, so that we learn to manage our moods, regulate our moods. We actually can learn to help ourselves feel better with skills that we learn in therapy, with things that we learn in our self-care, the yoga, the meditation. All those things really help us learn to regulate and soothe and become less reactive. We don't react to things as intensely, because we know we can get back to that place of equilibrium. Another way to really think about that is emotional balance. That window is emotional balance and equilibrium. So we can do things to kind of get back to that, back to the sort of center. How are we doing on time, Paolo?
Sorry, there I was on mute. I think we're about halfway through the hour block here.
Okay. So I'm just going to talk about just some general coping skills. I guess before I get to that, because we have a little bit of time, is really, as a therapist, it kind of boils down to our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with other people. Right? This is what we're faced with in a time of crisis. Is we're often kind of more isolated. We're by necessity more isolated. So getting to know ourselves, getting to explore the issues around self-care. If there are barriers to self-care, learn what those are. Get some help. if there are a lot of barriers to self-care, because that's what's going to help you get through, and that's going to help you come through to the other side with some level of equilibrium. And there will be then a process of rebuilding, I think, for many of us, for our culture, for our society, hopefully a process of rebuilding. So getting to care about yourself, if that's an issue, I think we're all strongly recommending, get some therapy and make that front and center. Attend mindfulness groups, attend things that help you feel balanced and help you feel some sense of well-being. Some of the things that we can do every day in this time, this strange time when our schedules are totally disrupted, are approximate your normal routine. So make it like you wake up, you still make your bed, right? Even if you might not be leaving the house, it's helpful to do little things like that. They make a difference. And otherwise, we can fall into lethargy and feel kind of like, why bother? But the little things matter. Taking care of ourselves matter. Sticking to a routine that keeps you active is less likely to stress you out, and you're going to feel more balanced and normal doing it. So approximating your normal routine is a really good idea. Staying productive. It's hard to imagine sometimes if our whole day was structured around work, and maybe we're furloughed, or but looking at the little tasks that you couldn't do when you were really busy, you know, find those opportunities of things that you maybe didn't want to, clean out your closets, or and see what you might want to get rid of or sell. You weren't able to do that maybe a few weeks ago. Having some sense of routine, having structure is like really, really important. All of these things help in a irregular period of time, when we're not in crisis, is just doing things that are productive and taking care of things. Not getting too saturated with the news, right? It's good to be informed, but not bombarding yourself with it all the time. You're likely to get more activated. There's a lot of stuff going on. So partitioning things in your life, like your home, keeping things separate. If I'm not going to work, I could just work out of my bed, right? But at a certain point, that's not really going to be helpful. It's really helpful to kind of put things in their own places. Everything has a place, and structure things in that way. Doing nurturing things like, open the window for fresh air, burn scented candles, and run some aromatherapy, music, dance, nurturing activities are really, really important. Let's see. I wanted to, there's a little bit on tips for sleep that I wanted to give, because a lot of people's sleep cycle gets really disrupted. Most of you are probably familiar with, if you've had any sleep issues, what we call sleep hygiene. And that means being consistent, going to bed around the same time, getting up at the same time, having kind of a schedule. Make sure your bedroom is quiet, dark, and relaxed, at a comfortable temperature. Remove electronic devices such as TVs, computers, smartphones from the bedroom. That's really, really important. Those things keep us awake. And good nutrition and exercise, I cannot emphasize enough. It's like so important. It's really good to see people just walking outside with their masks on, of course. These are just some resources for us. We have individual and couples therapy for West Hollywood residents or people who work in WeHo. And that is the phone number you can call for that. We have psychoeducational groups. We have a mindfulness group coming up, and a group called Sex, Relationships, and Recovery. And that's, yes, this is our mindfulness group. We're starting May 18th. And of course, it's going to be telehealth. So we'll be on Zoom. We'll privatize the Zoom. And we have Dr. Matthew Silverstein, who is really kind of pretty much a master of mindfulness. He's a psychologist. The group is actually called MBCT, Mindfulness-Based Cognitive Therapy. It's evidence-based. There's research to show that it significantly helps alleviate depression, anxiety, and stress. It's a really wonderful series that Matt is doing. And one of the things that, well, there's many things that happen with mindfulness, and actually we're using it in mental health more and more, is that when things are really stressful, everything seems up close. It's like it's collapsing in on you. And from that place, it's pretty hard to make good decisions or practice behavior that's really healthy for you. Mindfulness and meditation both help us create what we call cognitive diffusion, so that we're not fused. We're not fused with our negative thoughts, with our worries, with our fears, with our upset, our turbulent emotions. We're not just jacked around and yanked around by our emotions and our thoughts. It really we can learn to create a kind of an equilibrium, and we can learn to get like some distance from those things instead of letting them run us. That's one of the tremendous benefits of doing mindfulness work and meditation work. And people don't need to have any special skills to join this group. Introductory is fine. And it's 8 weeks. You don't have to join every week. Of course, the more consistently you attend, the more the benefits, right? So this is really special. We're really lucky, Matt. We were able to get a little funding for it, but Matt also just really wanted to do something for people during this time of crisis. So we encourage you to check that out. Give me a call. We're setting up that and sending out links for that soon. And our other group, Sex, Relationships, and Recovery, is run by Matthew Spector. That's the facilitator. He is an MFTI intern. He attended the Antioch LGBT specialization program. So he's really working from a perspective of, what does societal and internalized homophobia do to us? How does it affect us? How does it affect our relationships? And it's for a really wide variety of people who are wanting to establish different types of relationships, people that may have had some compulsive sexual and or substance stuff, and people who are striving to make things better with those patterns in their life. So Matthew's info there. And this is generally our mental health therapy. it wasn't designed just for, this time in mind, but in general, any of these issues that you're dealing with. And then if you're dealing with this particular crisis and it's really affecting you, please do give us a call. This is for clients who live or work in West Hollywood, but I also provide referrals for people who don't live in the city. And yes, therapy is free. Thank you to the city of West Hollywood.
Great. Thank you so much, Lydia. And then Lika will go over the Jewish Family Service.
Hello, hello everybody. My name is Lika Leet, and I'm a clinical supervisor at West Hollywood Comprehensive Service Center. It's a program of Jewish Family Service of Los Angeles. And I'm very honored to be asked to present on stress and anxiety. Lydia talked a lot about the biology of how we experience and start feeling stress and anxiety. But the first thing I would like to note that it is completely normal to be experiencing wide range of emotions. And paying attention to your emotions and acknowledging those feelings is the first step of building your resilience. The simple step like naming those emotions can benefit your well-being. The feelings can change from one day to another. You can feel worried, helpless, fearful, lonely, isolated, and overwhelmed one day, and next day you can feel guilty, angry, and frustrated and depressed. It's during these uncertain times. Anxiety, I wanted to talk a little bit about anxiety. Anxiety is commonly described as having both physical and mental symptoms. People experiencing anxiety have a low tolerance for uncertainty. But it is important to remember that uncertainty is a part of life, and sooner we become more comfortable with it, the sooner we can reduce mental suffering. Anxiety can come on its own. It can be a response of stress, and it can trigger stress. So if it happens because of stress, it can intensify stress and even bring panic attacks. It is very important to understand that we cannot stop anxiety from happening, but what we can do, we can learn how to respond to anxiety helpfully so you won't be carried away by it. Anxiety is best described as unhelpful thinking patterns. And in cognitive behavioral therapy, we call it distorted thinking or distorted way of thinking. So there are several examples I would like to present of distorted way of thinking. It's catastrophizing. It's when your mind jumps to the worst possible scenarios. For example, you wake up in the morning and you start coughing, and right away your mind tells you you probably got coronavirus and you probably will get very sick and probably will never recover. Another way of distorted thinking is hypothetical worry. It's if you are uncomfortable with uncertainty, you are most likely be prone to hypothetical worry. It's spending a lot of time in focusing on the future instead of present. And the example for hypothetical worry, it's constantly thinking that someone can get close to you while you will be walking around the block and you can catch coronavirus. And another distorted or unhelpful way of thinking is emotional reasoning. It's when your mind tells you that your emotions reflect reality. For example, I feel guilty, so I must have done something wrong. So learning how to recognize these unhelpful patterns of thinking and developing helpful tools by changing your behavior can reduce your anxiety. So if you're prone to catastrophizing, it is important to focus your attention on facts, Like instead of listening what your neighbors tell you, it's important to review really facts, what CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention guidelines are, like washing your hands for 20 seconds with warm water and soap, maintaining distance at least 6 feet. It's extremely important to really focus on facts than opinions. It is also extremely important to be aware of what we are watching, listening, and reading. We need to remember that media is fully aware that our brains are built to fixate on fear and negativity, and they are often been biased in negative information. They feed us biased and negative information in order to keep us our attention. So we need to remember that in order to reduce our level of anxiety, we need to be in control of what we watch, how we watch, and when we watch. So very often I tell my clients that they need to limit their exposure to news to once per day, or maybe even taking a day off, doing like a digital detox from watching the news. Planning ahead with which news sources are reliable and what news sources to choose to read from or to watch can really be very helpful in reducing your level of anxiety. If you're prone to hypothetical worry, it's when you thinking what if, it's a what if thinking. It would be helpful to, as soon as you recognize these thoughts, to try and refocus on things that are within your control. So again, remember that we cannot stop hypothetical worries from coming, but we can control how we respond to them. For example, you can and within your worries, what within your control and outside of your control. Within your control, you can choose healthy diet, exercising, watching nice movies, or calling your friend. And examples of things that you cannot out of your control is other people's decisions, restaurants closing, opening, colleges opening, news you cannot control, news coming, aging process you cannot control. So it's extremely important to realize what is within your control and outside of your control to control hypothetical worry. And the techniques I use, usually my favorite technique I use with my clients that experiencing this related to like fixating on negativity is a think technique. Is TH, I and K, and T is for true. It's when the thought comes in, you need to ask yourself, is the thought 100% true? Or if not, what are the facts and opinion? Is it helpful? Is paying attention to the thought helpful to me? Is it inspiring? Does the thought inspire me, or does it have an opposite effect? Is it necessary? It is important for me to focus. Is it important for me to focus on this thought, or not? And is the thought kind? If your mind continues to fixate on negative thinking, sometimes it is helpful to find distracting activities like watching your favorite comedy or organizing hundreds of photos you might took but never had the time to organize. There is actually a silver lining in staying at home. You can do a lot of activities that you never had maybe time to do. It is important to pay attention to the activities you choose, and if those activities increase the stress or decrease the stress. Some activities you get more frustrated, so be aware that if the activity creates more stress and anxieties, you need to move on. You can allow yourself to move to another more pleasant and find another activity to make it more pleasant. I also find very helpful to keep gratitude log. It's every morning before you get up from bed, you can really think about what you're grateful for. Simple, like I am healthy, my family is healthy, my friends are healthy, we have food at home and other necessary essentials. It's also very grateful, very helpful to keep this gratitude log. And of course, two other most important things is developing a regular exercise and wellness routine. We all know that exercise reduces the overall activation of the parts of our brain that generates your stress response. So, and studies show that only 21 minutes, 3 times a week can benefit, so it doesn't matter what type of exercise. You can just walk around your neighborhood, you can do yoga, you can do stretching, meditation. So I think it's very manageable to do just 21 minutes, at least 21 minutes, 3 times a week. And of course, improving and increasing the quality of your social connections. I don't want to take all the time. I want to give some time for my colleague, Mandy Carpenter, who is the director of our wellness and exercise for GFS. And I want her to talk a little bit about how important wellness and exercising is to reduce your stress. And if you still feel anxious and depressed, please call your primary care physician, therapist, or please call West Hollywood Comprehensive Service. We have wonderful, experienced social workers that can really assess your current state and can refer you to experienced and appropriate therapist if you don't know how to access the therapy referrals. And at this time, many insurance companies, they offer teletherapy, and a lot of therapists are providing teletherapy. So, and one last thing, be kind to yourself, be mindful of your inner critic, and remind yourself that you can only do the best you can. That's it. Mandy, you can talk a little bit.
Thank you, Lika, and thank you, Lydia. I think I learned a lot just from listening to both of you, so thank you. And thank you, Paulo and Derek, for inviting me to be on this webinar. So I oversee our arts, wellness, and engagement programming at JFS, which means that I oversee all of our senior center, the activity programs. I have an amazing staff of 6 activity coordinators, and about a month and a half ago, we had to completely revamp how we provide services to older adults. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing over in West Hollywood. So this is our 3rd week of providing virtual classes. We are using the Zoom platform. And this week, the week of May 4th, we had 9 classes. We're having 9 classes. And you will, if you are familiar with our program, you'll notice some familiar names. We have a number of our loved contractors back on the schedule, teaching fitness classes. We have our Conversation Cafe back up and running, and we have a few new faces. We have a few of my activity coordinators, Chris and Danny, teaching some fitness classes also. So what we're doing is we really are taking it week by week, and we're sending out an e-flyer to our Paulo, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So we're sending out our e-flyer that shows the programming for the following week. And right now, who is eligible to join in on our virtual classes are, if you're a current active member of Jewish Family Service, West Hollywood Comprehensive Service Center Activity Program, or a member of Seniors in Action. This is mostly to manage who is coming into the programming, and also because we need to have fitness waivers. And our members of the program, we have all their information on file, and there are about 300 people that we are providing our classes to right now. If you are a member of our program at West Hollywood Plummer Park, and you have not been receiving our e-flyers, please reach out to Valentina or Alex. I'll give you their numbers in a second, and let them know that you're a member of West Hollywood Comp and you would like to be a part of our virtual programming, and we'll get you on that email list. And also, if you're not a member of our program and you've never utilized our programming, reach out to Alex or Val, and we'll take care of that on a case-by-case basis. Also, you do need to have a working email address. You do need access to a computer, laptop, or tablet with a camera, a microphone, and also you need to have working internet. We do ask that you download Zoom before you join our classes. If you need some help with downloading Zoom, we are here for that. Reach out to us, we'll help you out. And then also we need to make sure that you have a file on, a waiver on file to attend the fitness classes. Can you do the next slide? Here are the names and phone numbers and email addresses of Valentina, who's the activity coordinator at West Hollywood Comp, and Alex, who is the activities assistant. So please, if you have any questions, call them or email them. That is our main office number, which means that you will get a voicemail, but Alex and Val check the voicemail multiple times a day. So leave a message and we will get back to you. And then one last thing I wanted to offer, and we'll go back to the slide, but can you go to the next slide, Paula? So one thing we do have up and coming, and this is for anybody that is living in West Hollywood or adjacent that is interested in a fitness class, a free fitness workshop. We are offering an arthritis exercise workshop. It's a 6-week workshop that meets twice a week for 6 weeks, and we will start on May 20th. So I did not have that date when I gave Paula my slides, but we will start on May 20th and we will meet twice a week for 6 weeks. And the LEAP program is a program that we partner with Cedars-Sinai. It's a fantastic program. And the next slide, you will see how you can register. So Paula, yeah. So to register for this free workshop, once again, you must have a computer with a webcam, internet, and also a valid email address. And all you need to do is reach out to Katrina and let her know you would like to be a part of the arthritis exercise class that will be taking place at Plummer Park, and she will get you enrolled. There is some pre-enrollment documents which Katrina can send you via email, and then once you have all that taken care of, you can be a part of the workshop. And I've got a picture of our great contractor, Caesar, who will be leading the class. And we welcome anyone to give Katrina a call and get registered. And just we have one moment. And I just want to say, like Lika said, be kind to yourself. You know, reach out to your family. I know I've been having family phone calls every Sunday with my mom and my dad and my aunt and my sisters and their families. And it's been really, really wonderful. And also try to look for the silly and fun things online, because I think right now we're all looking at the news and can be a little bit heavy, but look for the silly things. There are lots of fun websites, and also the City of West Hollywood, their website is full of programming. So join something online, reach out to a friend. I've never talked on the phone more. I feel like I'm in middle school again. I've been talking on the phone so much. So reach out to my neighbors. I've been talking to my neighbors, texting with my neighbors. So reach out to somebody who you know might be lonely. And then, like Lika said, be kind to yourself. And thank you for letting me be on this webinar today.
Well, thank you all for those wonderful presentations. I think we have a couple of questions that kind of popped in here. So the first one is, hi, I'd like to ask if the mindful therapy is open for people outside of the States also.
Yeah, I believe it should be. It's not a therapy group per se. It's meditation. It has CBT elements in it. Yeah. Great,
thank you. And then we're just going to go over a couple of other questions. So maybe for everyone on the call, what are some tips for reducing stress and maintaining work-life balance when working from home?
Muted myself. Okay, I think that it's really what I described. I think the number one, you should stop watching so much TV. You need to do digital detox, or choose the reliable sources of TV. And more pleasant activity. You need to remember how you coped during the times of your life. Exercise, walking. You don't need to do, I know, like, be kind to yourself and don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. We cannot do the same. We cannot go 7 days to the gym that we used to do before COVID, but we can modify. You need to modify the schedule, and you need to reduce the expectations, because it's completely different time, and finding a pleasant activities, reading your favorite book, rereading, or learning to play instrument, or just catching up with old friends. It's really can be very powerful.
Great. And then I think the last question. So there might be quite a few people with PTSD after all this has died down. What are the common signs and symptoms of PTSD, and how can an individual seek relief?
Yeah, post-traumatic stress is, I work with it so much, I've forgotten all the symptoms. But usually there's a kind of reliving of past trauma. Usually it involves that we experience some trauma, and that has some life-threatening element to it. And there's often a kind of reliving or replaying. With PTSD, we literally can't tell the present from the past, or the past from the present. We're in a place of just re-experiencing those symptoms. We might be hyper-vigilant, on alert, always ready for maybe the thing that happened to us to happen again, or something bad to happen. Clients that I've worked with, because that's a specialty of mine, sometimes they'll be in a session and there'll be a car or a loud noise outside. They're completely spooked. There's what we call a startle response. So you can see how, like, the nervous system is wired to, it's mobilized to prepare for threat and danger. So those are some of the more active parts, symptoms of PTSD. Some of the other symptoms of PTSD are things like, such as avoidance. We go into avoiding anything that might expose us to stress or feel threatening or traumatic. So we will shut down around, participating in life. We also may really kind of selectively try to forget large chunks of our life, because it might activate the trauma. We can also have flashbacks and nightmares. These are some of the more distressing symptoms of PTSD, because they really feel out of our control. Some of the things that we do with that are practicing grounding techniques, being in the body, being in the present, being able to distinguish between the past and the present. That was then, this is now. Seeing the safety in the present, that usually we're actually safe in the present. PTSD therapy involves what we call a more bottom-up approach. We're much more sensitive to the client's nervous system, and stuff that isn't logical. It's not coming from our prefrontal cortex. It's irrational. And we can't just talk ourselves out of it. Sometimes, in many instances, if we actually have PTSD, there are really specific approaches in trauma therapy that work with that. And another thing about post-traumatic stress is if we have a lot of past trauma, it makes us more vulnerable to trauma being reactivated in the present. So that's something to really pay attention to and get help if that's happening for you. If you have a history of what we call developmental trauma, that's trauma that started earlier on in your formative years. Then you have may have a lot of what Lika talked about, distorted thinking about yourself and the world. And, therapy can definitely help with that and help you understand how current trauma situations are linking up with past trauma and how that sort of comes alive for you in the present. So there is a lot of help for PTSD.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, all of you, for joining us here on today's West Hollywood COVID-19 webinar series. This concludes our webinar, but I'd like to remind everyone, for more information on mental health resources and for coronavirus updates, please visit us at our website at www.weho.org/coronavirus. Well, thank you all again for joining me, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Paula.
Thank you. Bye.